Henry Bell was a notable freedom seeker born in Virginia who settled in Des Moines, Iowa, and became a prominent figure in the local community. Bell was born Henry Essick in Goose Creek, Virginia on September 12, 1811. His mother and father were both enslaved on a plantation owned by a man named Colonel Essick, and Henry took his slaveholder's last name as was customary at the time. Colonel Essick gave Henry, aged 16, to his son-in-law, Tom Bobbins, who then moved to Decatur, Alabama. In Decatur, Henry met his wife, Jenny Bell, who was enslaved on the Bell plantation. They married and later had 16 children. After the death of his wife, Bobbins decided to move to Missouri. Henry refused to go as it would mean separation from his wife and children at the Bell plantation. However, Bobbins was reportedly moved by Henry's love for his family and sold him to another plantation owner in the area so he could stay. James Henry was the name of his new owner. His time at James Henry's plantation was often marked by violence. He was often beaten by Henry for small infractions such as accusations of lying, and Bell remarked late in his life that Henry was the meanest man that ever lived. Bell once fled into the woods for 3 weeks when Henry threatened to whip him. Still, later in Bell's life, sources claimed he was the happiest Negro that ever lived because of the joy of fathering 16 children. This claim was obviously made during a pro-slavery era, so we do take it with a grain of salt, but it was published. In October 1862, Bell lived on a plantation near Corinth, Mississippi, and found himself in the midst of the Second Battle of Corinth on October 3rd through 4th. His cabin was between Confederate and Union lines, meaning Bell often encountered wounded soldiers. He fed and cared for the sick and wounded, notably helping those from the Iowa Regiment. Stories about Bell's escape from slavery are varied. It is widely accepted that he left the South in 1864 and moved to Iowa. A Des Moines Register article dated from May 7, 1909, stated that Bell was freed during the occupation of Tennessee by the Union Army. This implies that Bell was living in or near Tennessee between the years of 1862 and 1864. Other claims include that Bell earned enough money to purchase his freedom, or that he was freed by the Lincoln Proclamation and came to Des Moines after the end of the Civil War. Another article from May 12, 1909, stated that Bell was not immune to the fire of freedom that was beginning to burn in the veins of the slaves and left his plantation in Alabama voluntarily. With his wife and children, they traveled on the Underground Railroad to Iowa. A Des Moines Tribune article also claims that Bell ran away to Iowa to be free and states that he stopped at the Jordan House, a well-known station on the Underground Railroad in Des Moines. It is possible that Bell was drawn to Iowa because of his encounter with the Iowa Regiment during the Battle of Corinth. Once in Iowa, Bell engaged in farming. He lived at 1004 Fremont Street, which was valued at $1,200 in 1905. He became a beloved and well-known member of the community. He attended events hosted by the Colored Old Settlers Association, including an annual picnic with Jefferson Logan and Isaac Branch, who were respectively a freedom seeker and conductor on the Underground Railroad, who are also buried here at Woodland. Bell was often referred to as a pioneer settler of Des Moines and one of its oldest residents. An article from the Des Moines Register remarked that he was one of the best-known Negroes in Iowa and, at one time, an important figure in colored politics. In 1905, Bell's health began to decline after the death of his wife. He was admitted for an operation for face cancer at a local hospital in February of 1907. In February of 1909, he had a fainting spell, and the bystander reported that he was dangerously sick. He died at 8:03 p.m. on May 12, 1909, at the age of 97. A large funeral was held on May 13, 1909, with many friends in attendance, and he was buried in Woodland Cemetery.